Who did this? That is the question we are left with. We have seen that science has told us we human beings are 250,000 years on this planet. We look closer and find that our genome has been severely messed with. So who did this? Let us stop and do a thought experiment. First question. What is the minimum required to do this? What would be needed to create a GMO like us? We ourselves are doing genetic manipulation so we can have a good idea of what it would take. Here is the practical question. Would it take a god with all kinds of magical power to create us? Or would it just require a highly advanced civilization of beings, much like us? In fact, if it had been some all-powerful, omnipotent god, would we not expect the god to do a better job on the genome? It's a mess. Literally. So here is where all sorts of people recoil in horror. Our reason and science got us here, but our entrenched prejudice, our deep indoctrination, our anthropocentrism will not allow us to go further. What are you talking about? Aliens? Are you mad? You are not one of these weirdos that hang around Area 51 in Nevada, are you? You're not of those fanatics that take pilgrimage to Roswell, New Mexico, are you? No, let us just slide back into the safety of science and gradualist theory, and tolerate if we must those religious who attribute everything to an omnipotent God, because that is so remote that it doesn't touch us. That is the kind of response we usually get. Ridicule, or just avoid the question. So let us take a deep breath and think rationally about this. As we pause, we can do a small mental exercise. Let's take all of those reflexes for a moment, step back from them and leave them in a little pile. We can pick them up later. Let's pause and take another deep breath and let it out. Now, we can safely say we didn't create ourselves. And we can say that we have shown we didn't happen by accident. The process of evolution went a long way, but it didn't get us to where we are and where we have been for the past 250,000 years. So then, once again we are left to look for some other being, or beings, that actually did the genetic work. Simple, right? Where do we look? Well, it so happens there is a history about who did this, how and why they did it. Not only that, but it predates the Bible. There is only one problem. The archaeologists have been telling us this history is mythology. They have been telling us this since it was discovered. So all we have to do is what we are told to do when reading any sort of account. Temporarily suspend our disbelief in order to hear what is being told. Then we can decide whether it makes sense, given what we already know. Let's start with the question who. Approximately 450,000 years ago, beings arrived on Earth. They came from another planet that has been in and out of our solar system since the early days of the solar system itself. Its orbit is a very long elliptic and passes through our system about every 3,600 of our years. The beings that inhabit this planet have a further explanation of the history of Earth and this planet, and the life connection between the two. There is a reason that life suddenly appeared on Earth billions of years ago in two separate forms, and that life advanced on this alien planet in parallel, while further along. For the moment we can leave aside the segment of history that we have about the beings on their own planet, and what led up to their expedition to Earth. Suffice to say, their atmosphere was in trouble and they had discovered that fine gold dust was the one thing that would stay in suspension and block out the harmful rays of space. This is something that we have discovered as well, using gold in their helmet screens to protect our astronauts from harmful rays. Their technology was well enough advanced to get here, to set up on this planet and pursue their objective of gold mining here for 200,000 years. They were set up to transport the gold back to their home, for a time using Mars as a planetary way station. It became evident that the best source of gold was deep in the ground in southern Africa. And so they began the arduous process of gold mining underground. Despite the fact that these beings lived a very long life in Earth terms, their year being 3,600 of hours, 200,000 years of gold mining labor took its toll. The ones that were working the mines finally revolted. To cut the story short, the head scientist of the expedition suggested that he could make a creature to do the work of the mines. He told them he would take an existing creature of the earth, a hominoid, and mix their own genetics to create a new creature that was smart enough to take directions and strong enough to work the mines. With the help of his own half-sister, a medical scientist in her own right, and the help of his own son, who was perhaps more wise than his father, they took genetic material from the one who had led the rebellion, and from females of the hominoids they found, and through trial and error over time they were able to create the first human being, the Adamu. This is where we have already noticed that we have 23 pairs of chromosomes while the primates from which we came have 24 pairs. In order to combine the DNA of the hominoids with their own and be able to reproduce, rather than end up as mules only, it was necessary to match the chromosome pattern with their own. Their pattern was 23 and thus it became necessary to fuse 2 chromosomes of the hominoids to match. There is a much more detailed account of the trials and tribulations of the process, including the fact that they found it useful, from a copper mineral point of view, to use the earth soil as a bowl, to do parts of the process. We see this echoed in the Genesis account of the molding of Adam from the earth. And the human race was formed. There are many more chapters to this early human race, and the future genetic blending with their makers. Suffice to say, we began our existence as miners for gold in Africa, designed to be slaves to our Creator. Some of those ancient gold mines have been discovered in Africa, bearing witness to this account. Perhaps that is part of the reason we tend towards slavery by times, and have our own fascination with gold. Thus far we have not named or described these alien creatures. They are humanoid, unsurprisingly, and most of them are larger than we are. They are the Anunnaki of legend, and the scientist who created us was none other than Enki, the eldest of 2 brothers, sons of the ruler of their home planet Nibiru. That ruler was the one named On. From slaves to ruling our own planet, this is the next journey that is fascinating. But there have been monumental events in the meanwhile between 250,000 years ago and today. So, now we can go back and pick up those prejudices that we left in that little pile, if we so choose. I would suggest that, although this has been so far just a very broad stroke summary of some of the essentials, already we can see some things falling into place. But wait, there is more. We will start to fill in some of the spaces as we go from here, especially the major issue of what this means to us in reference to religion, philosophy, traditional beliefs and so forth. There is much to explore in further posts.